right, folks. It's like 1 in the morning. I've been literally sitting on the floor, soldering, playing with microphones, looking for cables, trying to get this right. And I just realized, let's just go with it. It's just a podcast about pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is Coast to Coast Pinball, episode number 1. And I'll bet right now you're waiting for the exciting music and the call-outs from pinball machines that you know and love and all that stuff. Well, it's not going to happen, because that's what anybody would do. I'm not going to do it. I refuse. I will not give in to the pressure. Although I want to, not going to do it. So, on with the show.
Go time! Out to the cemetery!
That's what we do searching for.
It has to warm up so it can kill you!
I am the ringmaster.
Welcome!
So who am I? My name's Nate. Good to meet you. I live in San Diego, California. I travel for my real job, my profession, so I end up on both coasts quite a bit. I run a sales territory for a company in the Northeast, so that's why we're calling it Coast to Coast Pinball. And why another podcast? Because I feel like we're sort of getting inundated with podcasts right now. There's lots of them. There's good ones, and they're entertaining, and I listen to all of them, and I myself consider myself somewhere in the middle of, pinball fandom, and I run out of content. I want more. I'm always waiting for the next spooky pinball or pinball podcast or whatever to hit my MP3 iPhone, podcast downloader. So I'm just going to add a little bit to the community. What can I say? I have done podcasts in the past. I have done podcast general humor. I did college radio. A huge fan of AM radio and talk radio. I grew up listening to Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM. So the name of this show and my blog is sort of a tip of the hat to that. So here we go. I hope you guys enjoy. My history with pinball, I think I'm a lot like most of you that are listening. I grew up in the days of Nintendo. I got a Nintendo for I think I was 6 at Christmas. But I do remember the very first time I walked into a dirty old arcade in Sonoyta, Arizona. And there was an old EM game there, which I don't even remember now. And just the sounds were amazing to me. And solid-state machines were out at this point. This was the 80s. But this was a dusty little Arizona desert town with a really cool old EM game that I put a few quarters in and quickly lost my balls, much as I do today on most EMs. But it really is just love at first sight in a lot of ways. Terminator 2 is something that I remember, growing up. It was everywhere. You couldn't go somewhere that had pinball machines or arcade games without seeing a Terminator 2, and I loved it. I loved the voice speech, the colors, the speed of it all. It was so fun. I was terrible at it. I mean, my ball time was awful. Amazing. I was a big, Doctor Who fan, sci-fi fan, and I'll always remember being in Tucson, Arizona. I was probably, 12 or 13 years old, and seeing the Doctor Who pinball machine with those Dalek, that topper, and just the absolute love. Still something I want. I want a Doctor Who pinball machine, so we're working on that one. That's that's where it all started for me. I have always kind of sought out pinball wherever I've lived. I've lived on both coasts of the country and some points in between. And just recently, since I moved to San Diego and took this new position, I actually have a coworker who was in love with pinball, and he and I started talking about it, and it dawned on me, why don't I own pinball machines? I should own pinball machines. So I started going and playing locally, and there's some okay spots in San Diego. I wouldn't say that this is a great town for pinball out in the wild, but I do travel to some really great places on the East Coast where I can get into New Hampshire and the Pinball Wizard arcade, and I think Middletown, New York has a great kind of hole-in-the-wall, undiscovered pinball place called Rock Fantasy, which I'd encourage you guys to go look for, and we'll talk about, I'm sure, on one of these episodes. So I really started playing a bunch of pinball. I ran out and bought a couple games. I made some mistakes, and we'll get into that as we go. And now I'm actually on the eve, right now, of getting the holy grail for me, which is a Twilight Zone pinball machine. I'm really excited. So I've already paid for it. I've just got to make the drive and go get it. Yes, I am the guy who overpaid for a Twilight Zone. I'll admit it. I'm okay with that. So that's a little bit about me. We're going to run the show in sections. and we're going to start out with something I'd like to call forum static. So if you go on the internet a lot like I do and you really read about pinball, you can't help but get on the Pinside message boards and the forum there on Pinside. Pinside, I think, is kind of taken over as the top place for us pinball geeks to get on the internet and go look for pinball. So you probably already know what I'm talking about. So I'm looking through the forum and kind of just picking out some stories that maybe have tons of posts or maybe just catch my eye and I think are interesting. I thought we'd discuss. And I think if you frequent those forums, you can't help but notice the Predator pinball thread that's going on. It's thousands of posts, and I think they've restarted it once. And I have not followed this post on and off because basically, in a nutshell, what we're talking about here is a boutique builder of pinball machines acquired the license to build a Predator pinball machine, and they're only going to build 250 of them. And I think the price falls somewhere in the $4,700 to $5,000 price range. And 250 machines, which you do the math, that's like $1.25 million gross that they're looking to take in. And I think this is literally just a few guys sort of working out of their home, and they got some whiteboards out, and they were hoping to get them games delivered. I think we're well past where they originally thought, but as it tends to do, things have drug on a little bit. But the people who are interested in this game and really supporting them just are ravenous with the postings on this thread. So it's very interesting to go in there and read it. I know that they've got some toys that they're talking about. I don't know all the details, but it's pretty exciting that there's somebody else building pinball. The game layout, from what I saw, didn't look all that amazing or fantastic. I think the theme lends itself to being something pretty awesome. I think Predator is a good one. I'm not sure why they didn't go original. I think, maybe they got the Predator license cheap. It gets them some press. It's sort of a dead theme in a lot of ways. I know there's been some restarts of Predator and Alien vs. Predator. But it's very interesting that they've gone that route, and it'll be fun to watch that as we go. The next thing I want to hit up, I saw an interesting thread tonight that I was reading, and I think the thread was in the form of a question of, when do we expect to see Spooky Pinball deliver their pinballs? So this is another small builder, Charlie and KT, who run the Spooky Pinball podcast, who I gotta say, they sound like two of the nicest people you're ever going to run into. They're building games now. I think it probably just dawned on them that they were already working in the industry, a lot of knowledge. They have friends who know a lot about designing. Obviously, Dennis Nordman's involved in the group. And I think they're bringing a really great twist with just their whole aura of what they're into with the spookiness and the monsters and the zombies and the ghosts that'll probably have a great sort of umbrella effect on what they do. And they're working with Ben Heck's game, which has been rebranded America's Most Haunted, and listening to him talk about it, it's a pretty great idea, sort of a reality TV show about hauntings, and put that into a pinball game. I think it's just fantastic, and it's pretty exciting watching this all take place. And the Spooky Pinball podcast was one that I started listening to as I sort of really came into my own and getting into this hobby more and more in the last year or so. And their podcast definitely it goes there, it goes places. It sometimes I know that they took to heart some friendly critiques in the Pinside forums about getting off topic and having their family, but I gotta say, I think that all of that, having their kids with the nicknames and sort of the community feel to their show, I think that's why people are lining up and putting their name in place to buy these games without ever seeing anything. And I mean, obviously, I think the backglass and the theme is pretty badass. I'll screw it up. It's Pinball Zombies from Beyond the Grave, I believe, with a girl who's rather a zombie girl who's rather well endowed. So I'm sitting here, reading that thread, thinking, I need to get on this list. I want this game, and I haven't seen the game. So I think that says something just to the work that they're doing up there. Interesting thread, because the second post in is Charlie answering, saying that, hey, we're working on it. We got a lot to go. I think his goal is to show the game at Expo in October, and that's awesome. Sounds like they're busy. I know he's already stated that Ben Heck's America's Most Haunted will come out first. under the Spooky Pinball production, I guess, or LLC, as they seem to call it. So I think it's a great move. They've got multiple products they're building. It seems like they're doing this, a lot of community help, family help. So I think they have probably figured out that they can be profitable if they move, 500 to 1,000 units, something like that, which I think you could probably do just based on the support I see on Pinside. And that's without even, promoting a game of any sort yet. So it's pretty amazing. I'm excited about it. I look forward to it. Like I said, Charlie and KT seem like really nice people. I hope to run into them someday. One other thing I'm going to touch on in Forum Static, this is sort of a general thing that'll play into one of my trip reports I want to talk about tonight. You can't help but notice thread after thread on Metallica. When Stern first announced Metallica was going to be, even before Stern announced it, when people started leaking that it was going to be Metallica, I got excited because I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I am a guitar player. I work in the music industry and in the guitar industry specifically, and Metallica is like a big part of my childhood. So I was pretty thrilled. And AC/DC last year was amazing. I mean, the first time I played AC/DC was at a bowling alley here in San Diego, and it was so fast and lit up, and the music was loud, and the shaker, and it was awesome. And I had it, and I like AC/DC, big fan of AC/DC. I think the game's sort of hard. I mean, granted, not the greatest pinball player in the world. I just had a lot of very short ball times with that game. It's real fast. There's a lot of spots where I was trying to, hit the targets. I would hit the targets. You get that moment of, yes, I just hit that lightning bolt. And then your ball's going straight down the middle, and you're kind of brokenhearted in a way. So I really contemplated, getting an AC/DC. And but let me tell you why I didn't. Why I have not bought an AC/DC. Because as soon as I played a premium AC/DC on site with the underground playfield, with the drop targets, and honestly, man, it was the drop targets almost more than anything else. Hitting that ball and that textural sort of sensation of the ball hitting a drop target and the drop target falling versus just a stand-up target on like their Pro and Stern's Pro AC/DC. I would have never been happy buying that AC/DC Pro, and $4,000 to $5,000 is doable to me for a machine I really want. $7,500 or $6,500 to $7,500. That's a lot. That's a lot of money for me, and I don't know. I had some real heartache over that. So I was really happy to see when the Metallica Pros started shipping. Some of the very first things that people said is it really plays great, it feels good, and it felt like a complete game, because a lot of people that got those AC/DC Pros, I think they knew that they were kind of missing some of it. And let me tell you, some of the artwork in that AC/DC Pro, like the train, the little plastic cardboard, I don't even know what that train, horrible looking. I think it looks terrible. It just looks so cheap. It reminds me of the Rolling Stones game, which might be one of the worst abominations of pinball machines in the modern era. Just so bad. So when the Metallica started, the photos started getting out and people started saying they were playing it, and it really was kind of, I don't know, it seemed to have it, quote unquote. I was excited. And then as the LEs have just started hitting, and the premiums, I believe, are also getting out, there are some extra toys. There's the light show, I think, is different, but I'm definitely getting the vibe that Stern made a Pro machine at $5,000 retail price that I think is very complete and people are going to be satisfied with. So I'm really, if I hadn't just quote-unquote overpaid for this Twilight Zone that I'm about to get, I would probably already have a Metallica Pro on order. So that's already something I'm thinking of, just because I think they did it on this one. And obviously, if you've played Tron, a Tron Limited versus a Tron Pro, there's a lot of differences. I've played, the X-Men games, the Avenger games, and it really is disheartening when the game is so different. And that's something you see pop up in the threads a lot. And I think Stern would do themselves a big favor by trying to really make these Pro machines the complete game, and then doing the limiteds and the premiums with more artwork and maybe one or two toys or effects or things that doesn't really affect gameplay, because I think that'll help them in the long run. It definitely excited me. I think they're going to sell a lot of this Metallica machine. Now that sort of leads me right into our next topic, and this is going to be what we're going to call trip reports. So I'm going to go over sort of a short trip report since this is episode 1, and I don't want to go too deep into some of the things that I've done recently, as I do want to hear this thing back and see how it sounds, and so a bad sounding podcast doesn't haunt me forever. But I'm going to give you a real brief trip report, and it's to the Skylark Bar in Brooklyn, New York. And the Skylark I only know of because they were the first establishment anywhere that I frequent on West Coast or East Coast that had a Metallica Pro pinball machine in. And it was kind of funny. I was out working in New York. I work all over the Northeast, but a lot around New York and Long Island, New York City. And I got the Skylark, found it, put it in my GPS, got down there, and it's in kind of a hip area of Brooklyn with lots of bars, and parked on a side street and walked in, and it's all these regulars, it's like the cool kids hanging out, and I just kind of walked by them all to the very back where I can see the glow of the pinball machines, and the first machine I see is a Harlem Globetrotters pinball machine, which I'd never seen. And on a normal day, if I see a game I've never seen before, I'm going to stop and really check it out. But I didn't put a quarter in it. I didn't touch it. I barely looked at it because that gorgeous Metallica Pro was right next to it. And I sat there. I had gone into a little bodega down the street and gotten a $10 roll of quarters and sat there for well over an hour and put probably $8 or $9 of the quarters. I actually had some great ball times on Metallica and really played that Metallica game. Clearly, the software is not there yet. There was lots of things that I was looking at it on the playfield, and I'm definitely a guy who likes to figure the rules out. That's the fun of it to me. And I'm looking at what I'm trying to do, and I'm kind of referencing what I've been doing on recent Stern machines and getting an idea and noticing what I can do here and there. And things weren't working; they just weren't happening. Certain modes I could tell just weren't built in. But boy, I tell you, the first time I got that Sparky, electro shock thing going, where it kind of shuts down and he starts shaking and rattling his head back and forth. Multi-ball comes on, so fun. I mean, so fun. What a cool toy. That's got to be one of the coolest toys in a long time. Good use of magnets. The color scheme of the game is just really attractive. I'm a big Metallica fan of the music, so the music's great for me. They had the game a little quiet in there, which was unfortunate, and they had other music blaring, so I had, like a bunch of, Black Keys music blaring behind me with the Metallica kind of coming out. But it was cool, and I loved it. And honestly, I was so tired from a long day of work, and it was 11 o'clock at night, or I would have dumped every quarter I had into that machine. So that was a lot of fun. Really excited about that. So that's the briefest of trip reports. I spent about an hour and a half hours, I don't even know how long I was there, playing Metallica Pro at the Skylark in Brooklyn. I did walk down the street afterwards to another bar called the Commonwealth, because on my Pinball Finder app, which we'll go into at some point on one of these episodes, it listed a Tales of the Arabian Nights. I just wanted to go. I was going to go play a couple dollars in that because that's definitely a bucket list pinball for me. And it wasn't there. They had a Guns N' Roses and I believe an older machine that I didn't care for. And I had just played the Guns N' Roses a bunch that was in really good shape down at the Silver Ball Museum in Asbury Park. So we decided not to indulge there and moved on. But so that's my trip reports for this show. Definitely want to talk about some highlights and lowlights. The highlight for me right now, obviously out in the field, is playing the Metallica machine. That's obvious. Also, Wizard of Oz, they're shipping. They're awesome. They're beautiful. I was lucky enough to play Wizard of Oz pretty early on. They had prototypes, or I believe a prototype, an early build version of the Wizard of Oz at a arcade in the lower west side, I guess, kind of downtown area in New York City. The Retro Arcade, I'm botching the name of that place. A really cool bar that has a ton of old retro arcade games. 2 Bits Retro Arcade, I think is what it's called. And then 10, 12 pinball machines. And they had a Wizard of Oz really early on. And I went and sought it out and played it a bunch. Obviously really far from complete. So it's good to see that those are shipping. They're beautiful. There's one here in San Diego, up at Nickel City. I've gone up there and played that some too. I got to tell you, the first thing about that game, though, as beautiful it is, and I know there's a lot of talk about the weak flippers, and the most recent game I played at the Silver Ball Museum had better flippers than the first 2 I'd played, so the shots were much easier and you could actually hit them. But I tell you, I hope that the scoring system that they're using right now, and I haven't dove into these threads enough. The scoring system is sort of like almost EM standard scoring, where everything's really, really low totals. So, I would end a ball with like 471 points, and that just doesn't even compute to my head. I don't like it the other way either on some of the later Williams games, where everything was like, you were over 100 million, on ball one without even trying. I kind of don't like that either. I think there's a happy medium in there that I think, Stern has right now in their games that I prefer. But I really hope that Jersey Jack fixes up the Wizard of Oz so that the scoring numbers just make a little bit more sense as these are starting to roll out. But congratulations to those of you who've been waiting on those games. I mean, wow, what a pretty machine, solid feeling. I think that's all been said before. Another highlight for me is just all the attention I think pinball's sort of getting right now. If you've listened to the Pinball Soul podcast, which is one that I just started recently listening to, I believe his name's Josh. I listen to a bunch of his. I drive a lot for work and fly a lot, so I listen to these. He does this great rundown of all the news that's sort of happening, and there's a lot going on. Obviously Stern is sort of hitting their stride with some successful games. AC/DC was a big hit last year. Metallica is supposed to be a big hit. Lots of units sold, which is great. Jersey Jack is shipping machines. Spooky Pinball is designing and building. There's a lot going on. There's things like Pinball Soul happening. There's guys like me, sitting here in my office when I should be asleep talking about pinball. I think that speaks to a hobby that is growing. I hope to start seeing more pinball machines on location. It's exciting. It's fun. Obviously, the downside is prices of the older games we all know and love have gone up. If you've been buying or selling or watching the market in the last year, that's definitely happening. But just a general highlight to start off episode 1 is I hope we're entering a new boom in the game. That's a good thing for all of us. The lowlights. It's not all a happy world out there. I did spend some time at the Silver Ball Museum in Asbury Park this last week. I actually got down there twice. Drove ridiculous amounts because I'm addicted. I guess you can tell. Because I love getting in there after 5 o'clock. It's $10 for unlimited play till they close at 9 o'clock on weeknights, which is great. And I'm playing the Shadow. They have a really great Shadow machines. Most of their machines are in fantastic shape. Real EM heavy arcade, but they have a good selection of solid state and some DMD games, and they have a Shadow there, and it's the only Shadow out in the field that I've ever played for any extensive period of time. It's in great shape. The thing was so off level though. Balls were literally coming down the center, rolling, and falling to the right, and I could just see the machine was not level. And, I'm not the guy who's going to walk up to the counter, and the poor, 18-year-old girl behind the counter took my $10. She doesn't care. And the guy that's working on machines, he's in and out, and I'm just not that guy that's going to go bother them. Maybe I should, but to me it's more like, I'm not going to play your game, and luckily that's the exception, because they run a really great place there, and we need places like that. But man, somebody's got to be checking that. That's got to be simple. So I am going to shoot a little email to them because I do frequent that establishment quite a bit and just say, hey, check the leveling on your Shadow machine, because it made it unplayable. It was really sad, and I was kind of bummed. And then I will say this: there was another game in there that was also on level. Their Funhouse was not level. I could just see balls falling to the sides. It didn't have spin on them or anything. That's just heartbreaking. That's pretty basic stuff. Get your machine set up right. Boy, they also, for a low light for me playing, they had a Theater of Magic at the Silver Ball Museum that was set up so steep and so fast. That's a game I've had a lot of success playing out in the wild, and having nice long fall times, and boy, that game ate me alive. Every time I think I want to maybe steepen my machines, I see that and I play that and I'm just like, no, I'm not that good. So if you want to play a really hard machine right now and you're in New Jersey, go play that Theater of Magic, and let me know what you think about that. I kind of made a joke in my Twitter feed ramping up to this about lowlights and the Avengers, because everywhere I go, everyone's ripping on the Avengers. So I was at Rock Fantasy recently in Middletown, New York. That's in Orange County, New York, near where the Orange County Chopper guys have their big facility. And Rock Fantasy is like a head shop. It's like, you walk in and there's like tie-dye shirts and metal posters and bongs and tobacco pipes and of the such. But in the back, the owner, I believe his name is Steve or Scott. I think it's Steve. I met him a couple times last week. Really nice guy, really into it. He has this awesome collection of pinball machines. He told me he owns over 70 machines, and I think he had like 20 of them in the store, and they're in fantastic shape. He has all sorts. He has some old EMs. He has a really nice creature from the Black Lagoon. He has a lot of rock and roll machines because it's called Rock Fantasy. So he's got the old Rolling Stones, the new Abomination Rolling Stones. He's got an AC/DC, premium. I think it's actually a limited edition. He told me he was one of the few lucky ones to have a Metallica LE coming, so he was pretty excited about that. And he has some of the new Stern games, Star Trek Next Generation, some really good stuff. He has a nice Kiss pinball machine. But it's the first Avengers that I really got to, spend some time on. And I gotta say, I wanted to be the guy who liked Avengers because the theme is so awesome. The shaker motor, the music. I love the music of this machine. It's great. But boy, this is a George Gomez game, I believe. And I tend to really love his machines, but this one, I don't know if he got into a situation where he added some things that were so cool it kind of took his eye off the ball, but some of the layouts of that game, it's been said by other guys on other podcasts, in the forums, just some questionable layout things, some shots that I don't mind a difficult shot. I like a difficult shot. I like something that you kind of really try for and maybe has some real risk to it to drain your ball. But I don't like it when things don't feel good, when there's that just wrong feeling. And I was actually watching the documentary Tilt, The Battle to Save Pinball 2000, which if you haven't seen that documentary, you need to watch it. We'll review it in one of our shows. But George Gomez is actually talking about the feeling of the shot, and saying how you're not actually feeling anything because you're hitting a ball with flippers through a button, but yet there's still this visual, tactile feel to it. Well, Avengers kind of is exactly the opposite of what he's talking about. The shots don't feel good. They feel clunky. They feel stuff's in the way. It just, man, it's like such a cool sounding and looking machine, and then just feels bad. And then I kind of feel the same way about X-Men, and I know X-Men's been beaten to death because Wolverine's so big, right down there in the middle, in the way. Everything's in the back right of the machine, which is where all the ramps are. And I think George also says in Tilt that, oftentimes you put the main stuff in the upper left because everyone's right-handed. X-Men feels upside down or backwards to me or something. It doesn't. I don't get a good flow and feel in that game. Not as bad. I do like the game a lot. I mean, Addams Family feels like that to me, quite honestly. And Addams Family is one of the most successful pinball games of all time. It's a left-handed game to me. It feels weird to me. I know you're gonna say, but Twilight Zone is too. Kinda, a little bit. Whatever. It's cooler. I'm a hypocrite. It's my podcast, and I will be a hypocrite if I choose to be. So, that's just some of my that's my lowlights. I'm not going to get too negative on anything right now. I'm sure there will be some forum stuff that I'm going to just bash on in upcoming episodes, but we'll save that for down the road. So, I also want to talk about we're going to call this going up, going down. I want to talk about machines that are sort of on the rise, whether in just sort of chatter about the machine, value of the machine, sales of the machine, things like that, and then machines that are sort of maybe stagnant or even going down. I don't think there's a lot of machines out there really going down a lot. I want to hit a couple of those. And these two machines specifically, because, as I told you, expecting my Twilight Zone, I actually feel like right now on the going down side of things, Twilight Zone prices have maybe stalled out and finally kind of hit their ceiling for now. There's been a handful of games that have just skyrocketed in value over the past few years. Obviously, there's like the big 4, 5, or 6 games. The Medieval Madness, the Attack from Mars, Addams Family. Some of these games that are just like top-notch games, the later Williams games, skyrocketed because they didn't have a huge run number. There weren't as many of those built. Well, Twilight Zone's funny because I think it's just, obviously everyone loves the theme. The theme is fantastic. It's incredibly deep for a game. It's hard. It has some staying power. But I do think we hit a spot where people got out of control. And I know this personally because the game that I'm buying, I bought another game from this guy. I bought a Party Zone from this buyer about 6 months ago. And when I went to pick up the Party Zone, which I won on an auction on eBay, just sort of a bid price auction, and kind of didn't even really mean to win it. I didn't think it would go for as little as it did, and I got it. Had some playfield issues. But about the Party Zone, when I went to pick it up, this guy had a Twilight Zone there, and it was in really nice shape, like fantastic shape. And I said, "Wow, that's a nice Twilight Zone. Is that ready to go?" And he says, "Oh yeah, it's ready to go." And it's going for $7,500. And I thought, "Wow, that's nice." And I had seen some online and heard stories. People bought them at shows and whatnot for in that price range for really nice. So I said, "Hey, best of luck, man." He goes, "Yep, that'll go." Well, so let's fast forward 6 months to like right now. I have sold a couple games recently and sold some guitars recently, coming a little bit of money, got the itch, and I went and spent some time up at the Pizza Port in Carlsbad, California one afternoon with my lovely girlfriend, who will be making an appearance on the show at a future date. And we played Twilight Zone one afternoon, and we just played a lot of it. And I just stepped away from it, and I said, I have to own this machine. I have to have this. I need this in my condo. I only have room for 3, 4 machines maybe. She'll kill me if she hears me say that. She would say 1 or 2, but 3 or 4. I have to have a Twilight Zone. And so I started looking and looking and looking, and a lot of the ones for sale when I started looking were in that $6,000 to $8,000 range. A lot of the ones, obviously, eBay has their high prices, but these are even some on the forums and quote unquote collectors selling to collectors. And I saw some Craigslist machines cheaper. A lot of those were beat up, not in great shape, and I love buying beat up machines and fixing them up. That's fun to me. I didn't want to do that with Twilight Zone. I kind of wanted to buy one that was in really nice shape, that would just be great, that I could keep in great shape, that I could maybe add some fun stuff to, and really just make it mine, because I have a feeling once I buy Twilight Zone, it's staying. And so I fast forward, when I get back around to the $7,500 machine I was looking at, and I emailed the guy, and I said, hey, because I know he buys and sells a lot of machines. He's, quote-unquote a flipper, and that's cool. I respect that. And I said, hey, just FYI, I'm the guy that bought the Party Zone from you. If you run into another Twilight Zone in this price range, and I was talking more in the $4,500 to $5,000 range, let me know. And he wrote back, he said, well, I'll sell you this one for a nice price. And I almost hate to give the price out, because I know people in Southern California probably can figure out who this is, but he shot me back a price. He goes, I'll sell you this one for this much. And it was, started at $75. I think he had it on eBay recently at $63. And he shot me a price a lot lower than that. But still probably more than if I was a little bit more patient I needed to pay. But it was really nice. I know the guy. Seems like a good guy. And it's local. I don't have to ship it. And that's valuable to me. And I just said, done. Let's do it. And I made a deal right then. So I'm going to pick that up, and I'm pretty excited. But I do feel like, looking at some other Twilight Zones that have sold, there was one in New York that I actually emailed the gentleman about on Pinside, and he was not getting what he thought he was going to get. It was a nice game in good shape, and I think Twilight Zone is one of those games, there's a lot of them out there. A lot of people have owned it. I see lots of guys who bought it. Maybe it was too hard, or they just kind of, tired of the shots, because it's obviously not a real super fast, flowy game. It's sort of stop and go, then get out. So I think some of those people maybe have it and have sold it. But that game, to me, Twilight Zone, has maybe plateaued a little bit, which is awesome for somebody out looking for one right now, because maybe it'll come down a little bit, finally. Which is interesting. The game I want to talk about going up is also a game I want to buy really badly, but I literally have watched the price go up $1,000 on this game in a year, and it's WWF Royal Rumble. I grew up a big wrestling fan. I love pro wrestling. I went to WrestleMania this year because I was in New York when it happened. So I don't follow it as closely as I used to, but it's fun, dumb entertainment, and it's mindless, and sometimes I need a little bit of that. And I had never played the WWF Royal Rumble game. I have vague memories of seeing it somewhere not working and being really disappointed when I was younger, but I'd never played it. And then I played it. I played it at Rock Fantasy, actually, in New York. He has a really nice one, and I'm telling you what, that game's fun. That game's deep. That game has a lot of cool shots. I think it's really well designed. I think it's actually kind of like a poor man's Twilight Zone in a lot of ways. If you look at it, it's sort of like a reverse Twilight Zone with some of the way it's laid out. It's cool. People hate the theme. It's pro wrestling. Pro wrestling's for dumb meatheads. I get it. But I think some others have started realizing this is a cool game. Some of the call-outs are a little cheesy and whatnot, but I actually think the music's cool. The shaker motor's awesome. I think it's a great game. It's probably my favorite of all the Data East stuff. It's a lot of pinball for the money. And I looked at one 8 months ago, I think, in California that I could have gone and picked up for $1,400. And now everyone I look at that's in as nice a shape is $2,200, $2,400. I mean, I can't believe I'm seeing people price these things at $3,000 for a game that, was $1,000, a couple years ago. Blows my mind. So that's sort of, I think, going on the way up. And there's a lot of other games, and I would encourage you, if you have suggestions, sort of any insight into that, please get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me at Coast2Coast. That's with the number 2, Coast2Coast Pinball at gmail.com, or find my Twitter at C2C Pinball. That's at C2C Pinball. And there's a Facebook page too, but you'll find me. If you're listening to this, you can do some Google search and you'll find me. So if you've got some ideas on some of that, definitely let me know. We're going to get into some more marketplace stuff next time out, talk about some sales I've seen happen, some things that I think are maybe funny. Going to do that. We'll cover the events too. I think pinball events are probably something that I personally will get more involved in as I go. I've become a much better player in the past 6 months to a year, so I think I actually have the confidence where I could sign up and get in that C group and hold my own, maybe. I did listen to the Game Room Junkies podcast a couple weeks ago, where I believe it was Preston, I might be confusing the two guys, went to the Papa event and at Pinburg, and his story about getting into it and playing and starting out really low ranked and moving up, and kind of the competitive side of that pinball made me really want to do it. His story was just so cool. I love listening to that, so that's exciting to me. Then I watched a Twilight Zone video, because I'm obsessed with Twilight Zone right now, because I'm waiting to get mine, where I think it was last year's, it was the Papa, they do awesome play videos, kind of going through the shots on how to hit high scores, and they were showing how their game was set up for the tournaments, for the competition. Oh my gosh, incredible. Taking off some of the rubbers on the sides so that you can drain easier, and just, I don't know, man. So I have a feeling I'd be in for a rude awakening at my first competitive type event. So we'll have to see how that goes. But we'll cover some of those as we go. I think there's an event up in Seattle this weekend, but this podcast may not hit iTunes between that. If you have anything that you'd like to talk about, I've actually got some interviews tentatively lined up, but I with some cool people throughout the industry. But I've kind of discussed with them that I didn't want to really waste their interview until we were a few more shows in and maybe a little more established, and see if anybody's even going to listen to this thing. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm excited to be here, glad to be a part of it. Please write or repost this podcast link for anybody who might be interested. And until next time, I bid you adieu, and rack up those high scores. Talk to you later. See you.
You got the power. You got the might.
No way.
Get ready for battle.
Give me your money.
Beat the Black Knight.